Hello, Beavers. Today we're going to be going over standard 3.rl.kid.2. If I had to explain this standard simply, I would say it is all about the central message. So we're looking for the central message, also known as the theme. So we're looking for the theme of the passages that we're reading. Um, if you search this standard into YouTube, a lot of really great videos are going to come up that can help you understand it. I linked, this is the Common Core standard, which is exactly the same. It has exactly the same description, so you can also look up that. But there's a ton of great resources online to help you better understand this standard. So I'm going to go over some of the things I think they might miss and teach you how I think I best understand this standard. So, what does this standard mean? Now it reads recount stories, including fables, folk tales, and myths from diverse cultures, determine the central message, lesson, or moral, and explain how it is conveyed through key details in the text. I like to think of it like this: a central message or a lesson or a theme is all about you. What life lesson can you take from the story? So, for example, if you look at Lion King, you can take the lesson of responsibility. That lesson itself has nothing to do or doesn't necessarily involve Simba or Nala or Mufasa, but it is something that you can apply to your own life. You can use the actions of those characters as key details to help you understand the central message, but ultimately it's about you. Um, what often makes this standard difficult for many students is you need experience to see that many stories have similar lessons. So, as more experienced readers, you'll see lessons pop up a lot of times in a lot of different stories. But the only thing that can help you understand that is reading more. So, I'd encourage you to encourage your student to read as much as possible. And with anything they read, you can ask questions about what they think the story is or the moral of the story is, the central message. No matter what it is, as long as it's a fiction story, it's going to have a central message. We'll talk about informational text a little later. And it's also important to know that at this point, the lessons are mostly positive. the the lessons you're going to learn are about advice. It's all advice for your life at this point. There aren't going to be very many negative lessons. Maybe the most negative thing you're going to take away from a story is typically to be wary of something or to be careful. But for the most part, the lessons are positive. It's also, like I said, it's important to remember the more you read, the more familiar you will be with these common lessons. So keep reading, and when you do, wonder why the story is working out the way it is, and what can I take from these stories as a lesson for my life. So remember, reading's all about you. All right, and real quickly, I want to go over the difference between a myth, a fable, and a folk tale. So, a fable is a short story which typically has animals as the main characters and teaches a lesson. Think of, say, the tortoise and the hare. There's a lesson to the story, and it's often taught by animals. Then you have a folk tale, which is a story originating in popular culture that is typically passed down by word of mouth, just like Hansel and Gretel. Again, often times having a big lesson. And then you have myths, and myths are a little bit different. They're a little bit of an exception to this standard. So, a myth is a story that explains a phenomenon that often involves gods, goddesses, giants, or spirits. Probably the most common one is Hercules, due to the Disney movie that came out. But the difference here is that myths often explain something, they explain a phenomenon. So, for example, Pandora's box explains how all the evil was let out into the world. And there's a lot of stories that teach about, like, why the sun moves the way it does, or why stars are in certain formations in the sky. So, with that being said, myths can often teach us, or we're used to teach, about how things happen in the world. So, while they can have lessons, they can also teach about something specific, but folk tales and fables are mostly designed to have specific lesson. So let's practice. Here we have the crow in a jug, which is a fable, and we have a question. I talked about before how experience can really help you with the understanding what a lesson is because they're often quite common. But if we don't have much experience with things like this, what will really help is looking at the questions before we start reading, because we know we're looking for a lesson. We're looking for what in this story can apply to us. So let's look at some of our options. The question is, what is the moral or lesson of the story? A says, always drink when you are thirsty. Now look at that, and it doesn't sound like much of a lesson. It sounds like good advice, but it sounds like I could only apply it in drinking and when you are thirsty. So it could be, but probably not. I see B. It says, little by little does the trick. That to me sounds like a lesson. I can apply this to many aspects of my life. This is good advice for everything you do. Then I have C. Stones are sometimes not useful. Right away, I think probably not. It's referencing a key detail in the story, or it's way too specific to sound like a lesson that I can take. Um, so now let's read the fable and see if we're right with our prediction. So the crow and the jug. And the directions say, read this fable about a thirsty crow, then answer the question below. An unhappy crow, choking with thirst, saw a big clay jug. Hoping to find water, he flew to it with delight. When he reached the jug, he sadly realized that it contained so little water that he could not possibly get at it. He tried everything he could think of to reach the water, but all of his efforts were in vain. Suddenly, the crow had an idea. He flew away and returned with a stone, dropping it into the pitcher. The water raised a little, making room for the stone. Happy with his discovery, the crow collected as many stones as he could carry and dropped them one by one with his beak into the pitcher until he brought the water within his reach. Had a nice, refreshing drink. So, going through the passage, what I'm going to do is highlight the key details which I think support my answer. I'm still sticking with B at this point, but let's see if I can find some key details to back up what I think. So I see he's trying to find water. That sets up our plot. He tries everything to get this water out of this jug, but his efforts are in vain, which shows me that that is his conflict. That is the issue. And here is his solution. He drops the stones one by one into the pitcher until he can get a drink. Um, so we have our conflict, we have our solution, we have a lesson that I can apply in my own life. Let's see if we're right. And we are. Again, I'd say this is why we look at the questions first. So it can make our life a lot easier when trying to discern uh, what the answer is. Sometimes all the other answers just don't make any sense at all. And in this case, there was one that maybe could have been, one that almost definitely wasn't the moral of the story. So that can help us when answering our question. So again, here is the link to the Best for All website where you can get some extra practice with this skill. I would definitely recommend it for this standard. The practice that they have on there, I think, is really good. I'll send a link directly to that standard. I'll send a link in the description. I'll put a link to the Best for All website. And I'm also going to put some links to other videos which will also explain the standard. Because, like I said before, I think a lot of people have done it very well. So that is all for today. I hope you all had a great weekend. And students, I will see you on Monday.